Obviously, Michael, you know everything there is to know about politics in the state of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania native. Okay, what's at stake here with this state, and what's the state of Pennsylvania going to tell us about the nation?
Well, first of all, good morning from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is the swingiest
yeah.
of Pennsylvania's counties.
According to Kate Baldwin.
I should also mention that the Dr. Oz that I just heard speaking of balance and putting people together, I'm all for that. Man, is that different than the Dr. Oz who was seeking the Republican primary. It's just another reminder that here we are in a general election and the ground has shifted. You've been talking about the issue of the day, I think. It's the mail-in votes. Dr. Oz defeated Dave McCormick by 951 votes in the primary. The general election is believed to be equally close between Fetterman and Oz. I heard Don make reference to the fact that there are about 3,400 ballots that are defective of mail-in ballots in Philadelphia alone. If it's that close, it could come down to the interpretation of how you treat the signature and the date on the back of the envelope. And look, we're new at this. We didn't used to have mail-in voting without cause. You needed to have cause if you were going to vote by mail. So stuff happens and people make mistakes, human factors. And it's not just, the low information voters among us. Citizen A in Philadelphia is Brian Roberts, the CEO of Comcast. He's one of the individuals who turned in a defective ballot. He had to go to City Hall in Philadelphia and correct it. So what I'm putting on your radar screen is if the margin in the general is as close as it was in the primary, oh man, this really could be a blank show for the next couple of days. I hope not. I'm hoping that whomever wins the Senate race doesn't win by a little, because it could get ugly.
That was the point I was making with Caitlin and Poppy earlier when we were talking about these defective ballots. Two things. It's easy to make a mistake. I have to look at my phone to figure out what day it is sometimes. And look,
Me too.
I'm on the news. So, and when you're writing things down, sometimes you just make a mistake. You may put, month 8 and it's month 9. It's just little things like that. And I said to the group here, I feel like, Michael, we should be making it easier to vote for more people, and especially if we're in this new sort of mail-in ballot thing, then we should sort of figure it out instead of throwing people's ballots aside.
Well, amen to that. Listen, Don, I was born in 1962, okay? I've got a tendency to write my date of birth when I'm asked for a date. So listen to this now. If I signed my name on the back of that envelope and put March 15, 1962, up until now it's being litigated, they would have accepted that, even though obviously I didn't vote in 1962. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, if you had left that line blank, they would have thrown your ballot out. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the voting by mail-in ballot is still disproportionately Democratic voters. 70% of those who requested mail-in ballots in the Commonwealth are Ds. So it's got a real partisan edge to it. And of course, Democrats want everything counted and Republicans want to be restrictive. Is it ballot security or is it ballot suppression? All I know for sure is it's going to be litigated if this is a close race.
And Michael, you're right that it does make a difference here because it's not expected to be a race with this huge margin. They have been neck and neck in the polls, so that's why this is such a big factor into how we're looking at this today. I'm interested of your analysis, though, of what Mehmet Oz just told reporters as he had just cast his ballot, he had just voted, because the closing message from him has been that he believes Fetterman is bringing extremism to Washington. That has been his argument. You saw Fetterman last night saying that he's feeling better and better every day in the months after the stroke he has. But he said, by January, I'll be better. Dr. Oz will still be a fraud. He sold miracle cures, talking about his past, of course, and his time on television. I'm interested, though, in the way that the closing remarks have changed from these two candidates as you've seen this progress, as you've seen voters head to the polls today.
I don't think the stroke, Caitlin, is an issue. From a distance, it's the kind of thing like in Georgia with Herschel Walker. If you told me in the abstract, here's a guy who's going to run as a pro-life candidate, and then multiple individuals are going to emerge and say he paid for my abortion, I would say, well, the bottom's going to fall out of that campaign, and it didn't. After Fetterman's debate performance, many thought the bottom would fall out of that campaign. It really didn't. Although the race narrowed, I think the race was always going to narrow because that's the nature of Pennsylvania. We're a purple state. I think it's the crime issue and the commercials that have been run about Fetterman and his tenure on the pardon board much more than it is anything having to do with his physical abilities.
You're betting 100% for what I've been saying, Michael Smerconish. What is going on
here?
here?
You guys are in good company with each other. But Michael, one of the points you made this week that I think is so important for our viewers to hear again this morning is the history in Pennsylvania of ticket splitting. And what you think is going to be a vote in favor of Shapiro may not be the same down the line for Democrats. Can you get into that a bit for us?
Okay, so Poppy, we got rid of, big lever voting in Pennsylvania. There was a deal between the R's and the D's that took effect, I guess, in the 2020 cycle. You can't go in. Like Josh Shapiro is the presumptive, gubernatorial elect. I'd be floored if Mastriano were able to run a competitive race tonight against Josh Shapiro. So you might naturally think, wow, what coattails that's going to provide to John Fetterman. But you can't pull the big lever. You've got to go in there. You could vote for all D's, you could vote for all R's, but you got to fill it out one at a time. And yes, we have a rich tradition of ticket splitting in this state. Think of Bob Casey, father, the late, great Bob Casey, father of the U.S. Senator, as the Democratic governor at a time when we had Specter and Hines as two Republicans. Think about Tom Wolfe right now with a state legislature that is Republican. Think about 2000, Al Gore wins the state, and yet Rick Santorum is sent to the U.S. Senate. So it might be a situation where people go and they vote for Shapiro, but now all of a sudden they have pause in the Senate race because they look at who do they want to control the Senate. They look beyond Fetterman and Oz. I could see that happening.
We'll see what does happen, what the voters decide. The ticket splitting could be an interesting part, not just in Pennsylvania, but in many states this election day. Michael, Pennsylvania's own.
He's at the Philadelphia Inquirer.
The Philly Inquirer is just really cool today. Like, this is it, man. We've been talking about it for a year. Finally, it's game on in Pennsylvania.
And you're making me miss living there. You're making me
Don,
miss
I
living
remember
there.
when you were here. I remember when you were at Channel 10. We had some good times.
We did. As I have conveyed this story, I would leave to go to the parking lot at the building. It was Montgomery County, right? Bala-Kenwood. And,
absolutely, yeah.
And Michael Smerconish would be inside of the little radio booth, and I would look through the glass, and he would be doing his show. I'd wave at him, and I'd go to my car.
And look at you now.
Yeah.
And look at you now. And look at you now, Michael. All right.
Thank you, Michael.
I love that headline. Let's see what the voters decide. Pennsylvania's own Michael Smerconish, thank you. We are going to stay